Let's check to see if our person captioner is here.
Volume's good.
Volume's working well. Morning, everyone, and welcome to the.
Oh, not yet. I haven't. I'm trying to get to.
Well, no, yeah.
Cool. Nothing like captioner not being here yet. Try this
Oh,
again.
he's here.
Oh, there it goes. Oh, okay, cool. All right. We're gonna go quiet. You're unmuted. I'm gonna admit all, and then you're gonna say it, and then I'll mute you again. Okay.
Welcome, everyone, and good afternoon. We'll be starting in just a few minutes, so you can get ready. As a reminder, we'll be recording the presentation today, so you can watch it again if you'd like. If you take a few minutes to put your agency and a hello from you in the chat box, please. Any questions will also be accepted all through the presentation. Good afternoon and welcome from cloudy Washington, D.C. Just a few things before we start. We'll be starting in just a couple minutes. I want to be sure that we get everybody in the room before we do start. As a reminder also, the entire presentation will be recorded, so you can watch it at a later time. Take a minute to look at the chat feature there. Go ahead and put in what agency you're from, any comments, anything you'd like for us to hear, and that'll be open throughout the entire presentation. So at the end, we'll be looking through there and we'll be pulling out questions and comments along the way to address. So once again, good afternoon and welcome from cloudy Washington, D.C. My name is David Fern. I'm from the Social Security Administration in rainy Baltimore today. I'm the co-lead for the Federal Mobile Community of Practice along with Jacob Parcell. For the next few minutes, I'll be sharing with you some of our research, solutions, thoughts on mobile friendliness. How to make your site more mobile friendly. I'd like to see some of your chat and comments along the way. So with that, let's jump right in. The agenda. So what are we going to be sharing with you today? First, what is mobile friendliness? We know there are many definitions out there. I'd like to try to consolidate some and talk about that. Why is mobile friendliness important? Why should you care about it? We'll talk about that today. What does it take to become mobile friendly? We know that's not easy, but we'll share with you some little tidbits and hacks that you can use along the way. And what is the ADAPT model? You've probably never heard of that. Here's a spoiler. It's a solution that we've been working on for a while to help you build your mobile-friendly application. So with that, let's jump right in. Remember, put comments and questions all in so that we can address those at the end of the presentation. So as we start, what is mobile friendliness anyway? There's no real industry-defined standard definition out there, but there's some common themes and traits that we see in many of them across the internet that we take a look at. We've got two examples here. The first is from PC Magazine. It says the website's easy to use on a mobile device. The second one is from the direct online marketing. They say optimized for mobile users, displays on the mobile device, and still being functional to the user. So the theme that we're seeing here is that these are all want to see the application working on mobile devices. But that's pretty general, and we know that there's a lot more goes into it than that. It's not as easy as it sounds either. We know that there are many mobile devices out there. There's makes, models, operating systems, versions, sizes of screens, everything different out there. So how are you going to be able to make your application look good to those users? Also keep in mind the omni-channel. That's what we're talking about now. Users expect your site to work well on all the different devices. And you can see in the picture on the right, your application has to work on that desktop as well as it works on the person's small mobile application. So why is mobile friendliness so important? We can take a look here at some of the stats that we have coming out now. This is from the analyticsusa.gov site, but there are many other sites you can gather this information from, and these metrics, you can take a look at Google Analytics or StatCounter, but they're all showing the same trends. If you look on the right, you can see the devices that people are hitting or using to hit the sites. And these are the government sites especially. So what we've got right now is we've got mobile at 46.8% and tablets at 3.5%. So over half of the people hitting your application are probably hitting it from some type of mobile device, either a smartphone or a tablet. So we know that your percentage may vary depending on the application. Because if you have a detailed form on your application where people have to go through, like the Social Security, where they have to submit an application with lots of inputs along the way, well, they may use the desktop version a little bit more than that, a little bit more than some of the mobile. But then there's also some field office locators. There's also small applications that we all put out there that are for people on the go, so they can find a place, find a situation, find something, and they may be hit by more by mobile devices. But we're seeing they're over the 50% mark right now. So in general, if you're not mobile friendly, you're missing out on half of your users and you're doing them a disservice because they're expecting to get something from you. So what does it take to be mobile friendly? Well, being mobile friendly is the intersection of many disciplines, and we'll see in a minute. And here are some of the different examples. We can see right here on the left side, the Mozilla.org. They say the important things to consider are presentation, content, and performance. And that's good. We don't disagree with that. But on the right side, these are our thoughts. We think the attributes of mobile friendliness are usability, because they're people on the go. We know that people are going to be using it in the cold, in the rain, when you're at your kids' games. You're going to be out there and you want that application to work just as well as it did when somebody was sitting at their desk in a nice warm office with 2 or 3 monitors working on there. There are also mobile device limitations. We know that when you're looking at your little phone out there, it's much smaller than the dual monitors that the engineer used whenever he decided and was building and fixing your application. Also, the input's different. You don't have the luxury of having a keyboard and a mouse to move around, but what you've got to use is your finger. On that cold day, that finger's wrapped up in a mitten or a glove, so you have to take it off to use. But we want to be sure those people can access our sites also all along the way. And keep in mind, your mobile device, while becoming more powerful each day, doesn't have all the software that you've got on your desktop. So we want to be sure that we've got the proper software and something that everybody has, so everybody can enjoy the experience. And finally, maybe this is the most important one, performance. As we talked about a minute ago, the mobile devices have less power than this huge desktop computer that you've got. I know that the mobile devices are getting more powerful each day, but still they're not as powerful as the big device. They don't have as much storage. And also the network, you've got to keep that in mind. You're not hooked up to a big gigabit, big pipe providing you information. These people could be out on the road switching between different Wi-Fi stations or going between 5G, 4G. They could be anywhere out there. And we want them all to have the same great experience. So with that, let's move on to the ADAPT model. So what exactly is the ADAPT model? Well, it's the model to help you build mobile friendliness into your application. There are 5 main phases here. First is to assess your site. Second is to determine the challenges. Third is to align the solutions. Fourth is to perform enhancements. And finally, fifth, test again and then repeat. We're going to go into more detail on each one of those. So let's take a look at that now. So this graphic describes the ADAPT model. This is an overall architecture that you can use to become more mobile friendly with your site. If you take a look across the top line, we've got the 5 phases named out. And those are the ones that we just went over. And then for each one of these phases, we've got separate steps or things or tasks that you should accomplish to get them done. And then finally, down the left side, you'll see there's sample tools. We provided you also the names of some tools or some things that can help you to get these tasks done. Now we're going to dive even deeper into these in the next couple of slides. So starting out with the ADAPT model, phase number 1, assess your needs and site. So what you want to do here is you want to look at the landscape, see what you have and see what you're going to need, what your customers really want, so you can really give them what they need. You want to assess the needs here. And in order to assess the needs, there are 3 things you need to do to accomplish that. First, take a look at the research the regulatory requirements. Everybody has regulatory requirements, and some that impact us the most right now are the 21st Century Idea Act, the Digitalgov Act, and there's plenty more out there. But we've also put right here Digitalgov, and that's going to be a great resource that you can use to find all the information we've talked about today and more. You've got to research for your specific application and needs. Then find out who's using your site. When we talk about who's using your site, we really mean device. And we touched on that a little bit earlier. Digitalgov Guide for using DAP is a great resource, and you can tap in to the DAP dashboard for insights. We've also previously talked about the Google Analytics and the Stat Counter. You can take a look out there and see what people are using out in the internet to hit different sites. That'll help you to be able to source your lab or test, know what applications to test with, what devices to test with, makes, models, sizes, so that you can test with the proper ones to meet the needs of your users. So finally, find out about mobile friendliness. Take a deep dive. So this is, as we mentioned before, it's a little more complicated than it sounds. It's a little more complicated than just shrinking down your website. So we've done some research. We looked at over 30 of the most used federal sites. We took a look, and out of that, we've developed the 8 mobile-friendly principles. So these are the things that are most challenging to the website. Just to touch on them a little bit, the first is JavaScript. Many of us have it, and we know that it's really cool to use, but it can be misused, and it has to be executed in a certain order, and it can block other things. So you want to be sure you use it properly. The viewport. You want to be sure that you're using the proper size viewport and enough viewports for your users' needs. We want you to also remember that navigation is challenging. People are using their fingers to navigate through these sites, and they don't want to get lost. They want to be able to find their way back home, out of your site. Installing additional software, we talked about that one. You're not just mobile application, and your mobile phone is different than your desktop computer. You don't have everything installed on it because everything won't fit, everything's not needed. Next two go together is conserving resources. So you're on your smaller device out there, so you want to be sure things are smaller and they take up less room, take up less processing power to be able to render properly. And then finally, there's some things to look at on the back-end server and how things are served up. And that'll help with your performance on your mobile device. And finally, don't forget accessibility. We put a lot of time into that on the desktop applications. We need to put just as much time on the mobile applications. Step 2 of assess your needs and the site. This is to build in mobile friendliness, whether it's a new application or you're just upgrading an application or site. What you want to do is check into the US Web Design System. We really recommend that you use that. We know that several applications that have just come out of development and have used that have gotten much higher mobile friendliness scores. So we know that it's working. This is a group of best practices, examples, and templates for components, design tokens, utilities, and page templates. They're going to help you to build your site quicker and to be more mobile friendly. We know that it's still evolving, and we know that it's maturing incrementally. But this site is very helpful, and it'll help you to do the best site that you can. And finally, in the third piece of assess your needs and sites, assess your site. Let's just test it. You want to take a look at it. You want to give it a quick once over with some testing out there. So one of the tools that we really recommend is the Google Mobile Friendly Test. That's easy and free to everybody. What it does is helps to set the stage, helps you to take a quick look and a high level look at how your device is in terms of mobile friendliness. Now, just keep in mind, we're going to be bringing up some more tools later, and they're much more detailed. And some applications can pass this test, but fail on many of the other tools. So that's what you're going to have to consider later on. But this will help to set the stage so you can know how close you are to being mobile friendly up front. It is a generic pass-fail. They do send you back some comments in the screen. Some of the main things that they look for are the biggest violators. Software uncommon to mobile devices. We've talked about that before, and they're specifically calling out Flash here because Flash probably isn't on your mobile device. Text size. We know that you can't, as we mentioned before, you can't just shrink down something and expect someone to use it, but many do. And then when they shrink it down, people aren't able to use it. And then the content size for the screen. Same thing with the text. When you shrink it down, well, is your finger, when you're out on that cold day watching the kids play soccer, going to be able to touch those buttons and navigate where you want to go? And finally, the line spacing, which is all linked in. If you shrink it down, there's going to be really small difference between the lines, small difference between the buttons that you have to push. So we want to be sure that there's enough room on the small as well as the large size screens. So with that, let's move into step 2 of the ADAPT model. So what we want to do here is testing. This is all about testing, more detailed testing than you get out of just the mobile Google test. So there's 2 types of testing we're going to be talking about here. First, we're going to talk about static testing. So static testing is when you just take a look at the code. And then with the code, what you're able to do is you're able to get back some information, and these tools can do that for you. After this, we'll talk about some dynamic testing, and the dynamic testing is where you really get in, get your hands dirty, and touch the application and move it around. So let's first talk about this static testing. So we know there are many tools out there. We put a couple of samples out here so that you can know, you can gather them, see what they do. We recommend using multiple tools. For example, whenever we get a site to look at, we'll probably use 7 or 8 different tools, and we'll sift through the results. The reason we do this is because each uses a different algorithm. Each is looking for different things. So by doing them all, pulling them together, you're able to find common themes and anomalies also. So you're able to pull out some better information than if you just ran one tool. Just think about it whenever we do security scans on our other applications. Well, we don't just do it with one tool. We do multiple tools, and we look at it, and we look at each situation and figure out what the real challenge is. So just going across the top here, 5 different types of tools. There's a page speed insights. You can see that focuses on speed and user experience. W3C, this is a mobile OK checker that focuses on the markup validation, CSS styles, HTTP levels. So it's different things than the first one. There's MobileReady that's out there. This one specifically looks at JavaScript, CSS, and caching. These are important things when it comes to becoming mobile friendly, but they're a little different than what we've seen in the other tools. Finally, there's the Verify SEO tool. This looks at Google bot access. So see, this is using a different algorithm to take a look at your site. So of course it's going to bring out some different things, challenges, and we know that everything it pulls out doesn't necessarily have to be fixed. And we'll talk about that later. And then finally, the GT metrics. They've got a lot of key performance indicators in this one to take a look at. So these are some recommendations of tools that we've been using. They're all very good. We do run them all, and then we consolidate the results so that we can try to pull out exactly what needs done. As I said, there are 2 types of testing. We took a look at the static, which was looking at the code. So now we're going to look at the dynamic testing. So this is really exercising the app. It's touching it, getting the look and feel of the application, and really digging deep and moving it around and looking at it visually to see how it looks. You can do that with test teams in your organization, and that's fine. We know that most people have some type of testing going on. They'll write test scripts or however they do their testing, look through the application. They need to be sure that they do look at it on multiple devices. As we said before, there's multiple makes, models, versions, sizes of all these devices. Just think of the Androids and the iOSs. There's everything out there. So we saw that this was a challenge in the past, so we formed the Federal Crowdsourced Mobile Testing Program. We've got a link there. The whole goal is it was developed to help agencies meet the digital government's strategy goals, because not everybody has the money and time and resources to develop and maintain a lab. So what we do is we bring federal agencies together and federal employees. We'll put out a call for federal employees. We'll facilitate a test cycle. So we'll bring these testers from the different agencies all together. We'll give them lead time. We'll give them help getting started with the application, give them a few tests to do, get to understand the application. Then we'll let them loose on the application, and we tell them to spend about an hour. So you'll probably see some of these opportunities come out in open opportunities where you can join in some of the fun. From that, everybody will create a results report, and we'll consolidate the results report. And from that report, we'll be able to send back to the agency that created the application some feedback on how their application is behaving, if people were able to do it, go through all the behaviors of the application. So what this does is we're bringing multiple people in with multiple expertise, some project management, some development, all different fields in government. They'll test the application and give different feedback. So once that's consolidated, you'll be able to have that report and know what to look at in the future. So we do the two-pronged approach, the automated, running all the tools that we talked about a few minutes ago. That gives us our static testing, and then the hands-on and the wild testing that we talked about that's really conducted by the other federal employees. So for feds, by feds. We give a nice results report to help improve things. Now, We don't just gather this information, keep it private. What we'll do is, we may hide the name of the agency, but what we do is we share the results with the community. So that's why it's good to get connected in with the federal mobile community. Some of the common findings that we've had is a lot of applications just have too much stuff going on. So people are having trouble finding their way around through the application. Also charts and graphs. So all these things we've written different articles on, and they're in Digital.gov. Charts and graphs look great on your big desktop computer, but when you shrink them down or make them look on that small device, or are people really able to get out of them what they need? Navigation also, people sometimes get lost. They can't get back out of their application. And then probably one of the biggest things that we've seen is just shrinking the application or making it smaller, making it display smaller really isn't enough. People aren't able to use the application that way. Then two specifics we did look with a TSA application. We worked on that, and there were some challenges going back and forth from landscape and portrait on the different pages. And I think that was a great find, because sometimes at our desk, we really can't change the landscape to portrait. And then finally with DHS, when we looked at theirs, they had some navigation challenges. So we've given some great feedback on that. And then with image sizes, I know that's one challenge that we all have, because a lot of times we want our application to look big and flashy with a huge, big picture on the front, but that picture can be heavy. But there's also ways to get around that. There are ways to compress the picture, and that's what should be done so that it displays properly and quickly on the mobile devices. The ADAPT model phase number 3, align your solutions. You need to figure out what you need to do to get the biggest bang for the buck. What's the best value or return on your investment? That's really a challenge. And we know that there are a lot of false positives with this type of report. We know there are many things that you probably just will never fix, and that's fine. But you need a way or a process to be able to sort through them. So the best way, and we've seen this now, you're given the answer. Whenever you run these tests, most of them come back with some type of report. And we can see the test tool report. This is just one little snippet from one. So for example, this one says, remove unused CSS. So what this application's been doing is it's been sending around CSS that's not used. So that wastes some of the performance time. They tell you at the top that it'll save 1.65 seconds. So doesn't sound like much, but you can have a bunch of files here, and that's going to add up. They explain what the challenge is. So it says remove dead rules from the style sheets. It tells you exactly what. You can click on learn more. They give you more information about it. And then they give you the URLs. They give you the exact thing that should be taken out or added. Now, all these aren't as straightforward as this. This is a pretty easy one. But this is some of the results that come out in these reports, and it's very actionable, and it pretty much gives you the answer, and then you can go through, you can figure out which ones are best to do for you and do them, so that you don't have to try to figure out what to do. So now that you have your big list of things that should be fixed and how, you want to prioritize them. We know, and we've talked about that, you can't fix everything. We don't expect everybody to fix everything on these. You have to balance the impact of the change with the design requirements. I think that's probably the best way to put it. We know that the risk equals the probability and the severity. So you have to weigh all these things, and you have to figure out what's best for you. If there's a big graphic on there and you've got to keep it on your site and it's really big and slowing down things, well, you've got to leave it on. But you've got to look through, and you've got to look at each one of these independently and pick the ones that are best and will improve your performance or the user experience to the best of your ability. ADAPT model phase 3, perform enhancements. So now that we've got our list of things that we want to fix, we want to enhance the code. We want to do continuous improvement. We want to do what's most important. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to pull in the test tool results, which will have the solution, they'll have the fixes. You can figure out how long the fixes are. Many of them are very quick things to do. And then remember, this is your point, this is your chance to bring in the web service, the web design system that'll help you. This will help you to make your application even better as you go along the way. You can rebuild your application and deploy the application. It should be better than before. Finally, ADAPT model phase number 5, test again. You can never have too much testing. That's what I always say. We want to retest. We've talked about 2 kinds of testing you can do here. One is the dynamic testing. So the dynamic is really exercising the application. And the other is the static testing. These are from all these reports and tools that we've talked about you can generate. What you want to do, compare your test results over time. You have the one you did before the build. You have the one you do after the build. See if things are improving. See if you've further enhanced your application, and you should be able to. And this just gets into the cycles of improvement. We can lather, rinse, repeat, on and on through cycles of improvement. And that's how you become more mobile friendly. So with that, I think we can move on. We've got some questions. Hope everybody's submitted some of their questions here. We can take a look through those. And be sure to enter any other questions, comments, thoughts that you had.
Great. Thanks, David. So we have a couple of questions from the chat here. The first one would be from Mike at GSA. He'd be interested to hear a little bit more about how the ADAPT model integrates with Section 508 and a little bit more about the accessibility requirements related to it.
So with the ADAPT model, we're still iterating it, and we need to iterate it a little further through the 508. I think that some of our tests that we get are accessibility tests, and we brought up that, I don't think we've included that tool today. We can include that tool later though, but there is an accessibility tool that we normally run along with that. But I think that's probably a great point, and we're going to have to be sure we integrate that.
The next question here is a question about W3C. It seems like a no longer supported tool. Do you guys still use it, or how do you use it? How do you look at it?
Yeah, so we've been using it, and that gives us some great feedback, information, and things that we can improve. So as we said before, we don't just use one tool that's out there. We use that along with the other tools, so we can gather and we can consolidate the feedback. And we are getting great feedback from that tool. So I know that we are using it, and it has been valuable to us, but I know it has been deprecated.
And the last question here that we have so far is there one tool out of the bunch that you kind of use more than the other?
So we've given you probably 5 or 6 different tools. The one that we do use probably the most is the Google Friendly Test tool, and that is the quickest and easiest. Anybody can just search Google, pull that up, do your test, and that's a great high-level, quick look at the application. But I think in terms of the other ones, what you can get is some like the MobileFriendly. If you pull out that one, what that gives you is a screenshot of all the different size devices and how the application looks on them. So it really depends what you want to do. If you want to do that, we usually put that at the top of our reports so that people can take a graphical look at what their application looks like. But then we pull in all the other information also. So we really don't have a favorite. We gather pieces of each one. Each one has an important thing to it. Like some are focused on performance, some are focused on SEO. So we think there's no one single tool right now. That's why we consolidate and use them all.
Then had a couple of other questions come in. When you say 508, are you working against the old or new standard, which essentially translates to WCAG 2.1?
So I'm sure it's on the new one, the standard. That tool has been upgraded, but we can double check and find out specifically what we're doing on the 508. Because we do include that in our results report for the 508, and I'm pretty sure it is the new version, but I'll double check.
The next question here is, what tools are you using for A11Y testing? Asking because some A11Y tools are more focused on traditional websites and others work better with technology like Angular or React.
I'm not sure the A11 why.
About A11Y? It's accessibility tool. It's
accessibility.
Yeah, it's just an accessibility checker. Okay.
So I know we use that checker. I'll have to double check that also with the accessibility, because we do check the accessibility on the tool, and I'll have to check that version too. So a lot of our focus and mobile friendly does include accessibility and 508. As we said, they're very important key components. What we've seen is many of the challenges with the mobile friendly have to do with performance. So there's a lot more time focusing on how to improve performance from the server and then on the device, minifying different scripts and unblocking some inline CSS and JavaScripting.
That's all the questions we have in the chat. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to drop them in. We'll wait just a few seconds. All right, thanks for joining us, David. As you guys will see in the chat box here, there's a couple of links that we're dropping in to join the MobileGov community for more information. We'd also appreciate your feedback if you don't mind taking our evaluation tool survey here. And then last but not least, the presentation and video from today's discussion will be available likely next week on the event page provided. Thanks again for attending, and thanks to David for being here.
So I just want to thank everybody for taking the time. Just want to everybody to be sure they sign up for our bi-weekly mailings that we have coming out, the Mobile Trends Ticker. Try to put information on that. And if anyone wants to contact me, you can contact me directly at david.fern@ssa.gov. We're ready to talk and chat with anybody about any mobile issues, and look forward to talking with everybody in the listserv.
Thanks, everybody.